What can you say about Scooby-Doo Where Are You that hasn't been said already? Well, how about that the history of the show and what inspired it is just as entertaining as the show itself? After all ideas come from somewhere. It's weird to think about it now, but when it first debuted in 1969, Scooby-Doo was a game changer in Saturday morning cartoons, in the sense that its formula was a new twist on old cliches, along with characters that felt fresh and original, but also felt pretty familiar. And that's what we're looking at today. What were the shows and movies that inspired this silly cartoon about 4 teens and a talking dog? So let's not waste any time, let's get started. You probably already know this, but Scooby-Doo was the result of pleasing parent watch groups who were up in arms over the amount of violence in Saturday morning cartoons, mostly from Hanna-Barbera's action shows. Not even broadcasts of theatrical shorts were safe. All the Hanna-Barbera action shows on CBS were canceled by the late 60s. On top of that, rival ABC would debut the Beatles cartoon, which clobbered CBS in the ratings. This put CBS president, the late Fred Silverman, in a tight spot, and he was in dire need of a hit. But with the exception of HB's own Wacky Races, nothing really came close until 1968's The Archie Show from Filmation, and based on the Archie comic series. The show featured the Archie gang as a band as they navigate their way through high school and being teenagers. It was a big hit with kids and tweens, especially with the bubblegum pop music. And at the time, it was the most successful Saturday morning cartoon. Wanting to capitalize on the success, Fred Silverman contacted William Hanna and Joseph Barbera of Hanna-Barbera fame with a proposal to create something similar, except this new show would be a mix of The Archie Show and those old radio mystery dramas. HP editors turned writers, Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, came up with a treatment titled Mysteries 5. The show featured 5 teens as a rock band, while solving spooky mysteries on the side involving ghosts and monsters. But the Mysteries 5 would also have to deal with high school, relationships, etc. Another character was added to the band as the group's guest star, a bongo-playing dog named Too Much. Yes, for those who don't know, Too Much was a popular slang term at the time. Certain elements of the pitch would drop. There was too much going on. It's funny because one of the later incarnations, Mystery Incorporated, would actually work in high school, along with parent and relationship drama, which according to co-creator Tony Savoni, impressed Joe and Ken.
So we do talk to, we talk to Ken and Joe. We talk to the guys who created this show.
And actually when we talked to them, we showed them some of this stuff. They said, wow, you know what? Some of these ideas that you're touching on here are things that we wanted to do in the original 1969 show, and they just weren't able to do it at that point. And it felt good to hear that, and we felt
like we were completely crazy. So
while presenting the concept art to the executives, there were concerns that the show would be too scary for kids. Coincidentally enough, the title of the show at this time was changed from Mysteries 5 to Who's Sisters Are Scared. So the retooled show now emphasized more on the dog and the humor to lighten the tone. Of course, the whole haunted house, spooky night, and wacky hijinks isn't exactly new, as it was a staple of comedies and cartoon shorts for many years. The core premise may also have been inspired by the children's novel series, The Famous Five, where a group of 5 young children and their dogs stumble upon adventures involving treasure and criminals. Even Silverman admitted that the Abbott and Costello Meat movies was an influence on Scooby-Doo.
Going back to the days when, as a kid, I would go and look at Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, and movies like that. I figured there was a great opportunity to do that, played for laughs in animation. Our Abbott and Costello will be Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. And went there, and in a matter of 2 hours, we had revised the concept, and it worked. It just worked great.
Before we continue, if you like this or any of my other videos, I would ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon, where every dollar goes into production, like software expenses, and getting these out on a regular basis. You get early access, a special credit, a look behind the scenes, video shoutouts, question priorities. You can even request a Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry special for the fantastic legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes, which could be anything from this list. You could also donate to me on Ko-fi, and liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and clicking the bell icon helps a great deal as well. Thank you all so much for your support, and now, back to the show. The Mystery Inc. gang went through many changes in design, with the 5 teens reduced to 4, and Scooby, who was originally a sheepdog, being changed to a Great Dane, likely to avoid comparisons to Archie's hot dog. The human members of the gang were also given new names. Kelly Summers was now Daphne Blake, Linda and WW were no longer brother and sister, and became Velma and Shaggy respectively. Jeff and Mike were merged into one character named Ronnie, and was later renamed Fred. I wonder why. Like many Hanna-Barbera shows, the characters were modeled after popular celebrities and TV shows at the time. The teens of Mystery Inc. were inspired by the cast of the 60s sitcom The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Dobie Gillis centered on a teen named Dobie who was interested in gaining popularity, money, fame, and hot chicks. It's definitely a time capsule of 60s youth culture, especially with the character Maynard G. Krebs, played by Bob Denver, one of the first representations of the beatnik counterculture on television, and who resembles a certain dog food eating hippie we all know and love. In the second episode, Hassle in the Castle, Shaggy even does a variation of Maynard's "You rang" catchphrase.
You rang, you buzzed?
The personalities of the rest of the kids were far removed from their Dobie Gillis counterparts. Fred was nothing like the lovesick Dobie, Daphne wasn't a gold-digging schemer like Thalia, and Velma wasn't like the Dobie-crazy Zelda. There were discussions of what kind of dog, later renamed Scooby-Doo, would be, a small feisty dog or a big cowardly dog. The latter was chosen due to having more of a character to play with. Joe and Ken envisioned Scooby-Doo to be a cowardly hero, who, where there was danger, as scared as he was, he always came through, similar to Bob Hope comedies. Speaking of which, the 1940 film Ghostbreakers, that's another film that features many hallmarks that Scooby-Doo will be known for. Haunted houses, ghosts, zombies, a mystery that needs to be solved. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe and Ken drew inspiration from that movie as well. Some of the monsters in Where Are You, notably in the episode A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts, also seem to be homages to the classic Universal monsters. Music played a big part of Scooby-Doo's identity. In Where Are You, the show's music director was Hanna-Barbera's then recent composer, Ted Nichols, who started with the studio in the mid to late 60s, mostly on HB's action shows. His score is the right balance between spooky, adventurous, and playful. Many cues were recycled from previous HB projects Ted worked on, like Banana Splits, New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Johnny Quest, and A Man Called Flintstone. The second season featured the addition of chase songs, Archie show-like bubblegum pop tunes performed by singer Austin Roberts. These were reminiscent of musical romps from the Monkees TV show, where hijinks ensue as a monkey song played in the background during the show's chase scenes. I say this without a hint of irony, but these songs really are bangers. Yeah, they're cheesy and a product of the times, but they just put me in a good mood. All the songs will later be released on a compilation album, Scooby-Doo Snack Tracks, in 1998, which is now out of print. Ted Nichols' score would continue to be recycled in several Scooby series in the Hanna-Barbera era, even when HB's main music director, Hoyt Curtin, took over, and would reappear from time to time in commercials, specials, and remixed in 2 of Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies from 2003. Scooby-Doo Where Are You premiered September 13th, 1969, and became a massive hit for Hanna-Barbera and CBS's Saturday morning lineup. Oddly enough, it debuted at the same time as another mystery-solving show, Filmation's The Hardy Boys, which is based on an established book series. There was concern that the Hardy Boys would overshadow Hanna-Barbera's newest star, and, you probably don't need to be told this, Scooby-Doo won out in the end. Scooby-Doo became so popular it became influential itself. There's a saying in Hollywood that goes, if it's successful, do it again. And Hanna-Barbera did just that in the 70s, with most of the Saturday morning lineup on the big 3 networks filled with Scooby-Doo clones. Shows about teenagers solving crimes with the help of a wacky animal, car, or ghost. Hey, let's do Scooby-Doo but with a talking shark. Or hey, let's do Scooby-Doo but with 2 cowardly dogs. Or hey, let's do Scooby-Doo, but the dog wears a hat. And the Partridge Family are there for some reason. Yeah, I gotta get to that Danny Bonaducci crowd. Some would even go as far as to use the same voice actors and music cues. Some variations of the concept were inventive. Josie and the Pussycats borrowed from Scooby-Doo, but it did stand out enough to be its own thing. And when Joe Ruby and Ken Spears went to start their own studio, Ruby Spears, their first cartoon was a Scooby-Doo clone, but with a twist, one of the teens turned into a werewolf in each episode. There were so many of these Scooby clones, I remember Cartoon Network had a block of them called Mysteries Inc., and Boomerang had a similar one called Those Meddling Kids. Many follow-up Scooby series in the 70s and 80s would capitalize on popular trends at the time. For example, Scrappy-Doo came at a time where several cartoon characters were given cute kid sidekicks, while 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo was released at the height of the popularity of Ghostbusters. Pup Named Scooby-Doo followed the babyfication trend, which was started by Muppet Babies, but took an influence of the Ralph Bakshi Mighty Mouse in terms of wacky humor. After a brief hiatus in the early 90s, the franchise would find a new life and reruns on Cartoon Network. And after Time Warner acquired the Turner/Hanna-Barbera properties, Warner Brothers Animation would eventually take over the franchise, releasing tons of straight-to-DVD films since 2003, new shows, theatrical and TV movies, and several waiting apologies. For a cartoon that's as iconic as Scooby-Doo, it's really interesting to look at what inspired it, as well as how it changed everything in terms of kids' TV. Is it formulaic? Yes. Can they be corny at times? Yes. But these characters are still so lovable, and the horror comedy aspect has stood the test of time. And like I said before, it will never get old to me. I'm glad the show has continued to stick around after all these years, and keep entertaining fans, young and old. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
I don't need to talk about how legendary Scooby-Doo Where Are You is, because we all know it. For such a short run, these cartoons have been shown continuously since 1969. It launched a successful franchise, and with each decade, attracted a new generation of fans. They also had a huge presence in home media over the years, and today, we're gonna go over all of them. So, let's get started. When it comes to VHS releases in the late 80s and early 90s, Scooby-Doo cartoons could be seen on several VHSs from World Vision, owned by Taft Broadcasting, which in turn owned Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera would get their own home video line after the shakeup that would lead to Taft being brought out by businessman Carl Lindell Jr. It would become Great American Broadcasting. Along with many other Hanna-Barbera properties, Hanna-Barbera Home Video will release several Scooby-Doo cartoons and specials on VHS. Perhaps the most notable of these releases will be the Hanna-Barbera Personal Favorites line. These were a collection of videos that, as the title suggests, were favorite episodes of some of HB's memorable animated series, Flintstones, Johnny Quest, Yogi Bear, The Works, handpicked by founders William Hanna and Joseph Barbera as they would introduce each episode. Episodes on this video included the very first episode of Where Are You? What a Night for a Night, the new Scooby-Doo movies episode, The Secrets of Shark Island, guest starring Sonny and Cher, the Scooby and Scrappy episode, Scooby Gumbo, and the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries episode, Wizards and Warlocks. In 1991, billionaire Ted Turner would acquire the Hanna-Barbera library, which led to the creation of Cartoon Network, and meant the closing of the Hanna-Barbera home video line. In 1995, Scooby-Doo reruns would move from USA Cartoon Express to Cartoon Network, which became very popular, and introduced the Meddling Mutt to a new audience. And Turner Entertainment will release the Where Are You series on VHS as part of the short-lived Cartoon Network video line. Enter classic Scooby-Doo. These videos would typically have 2 episodes of the Where Are You series with 2 Hanna-Barbera shorts as bonus features. The first one, usually starring one of HB's classic characters, and the other was a short from the then new What a Cartoon Show program. The video sold well and was supported by a huge marketing campaign, including a promotion with Burger King. Turner also released the 1994 special Arabian Nights, and videos featuring holiday-themed episodes from 80 Scooby-Doo shows. In the 2000s, these videos would be re-released by Warner Brothers. Speaking of which, In 1996, Turner Broadcasting merged with Time Warner, now Warner Brothers Discovery, and further Scooby-Doo videos will be released by Warner Home Video from here on in. At the time Scooby-Doo was beginning to make a comeback in a big way, Warner would continue the classic Scooby-Doo video line, and with Cartoon Network Video being no more, they were still released with the Cartoon Network branding. Seeing how Scooby-Doo reruns were exclusive to the channel during this time. The videos would also have a bonus episode from the then recent Cartoon Network shows, like Dexter's Lab, Pop-Up Girls, and Cow and Chicken, still under the Hanna-Barbera name. Other compilations during this time include 1999's Scooby-Doo's Greatest Mysteries, a collection of 4 episodes handpicked by fans, with bonus features the Boogie Frights episode of the Pop-Up Girls, and the Behind the Music parody, Scooby-Doo Behind the Scenes, 2000's Original Mysteries, the first 5 episodes of the original series, and the first ever Scooby-Doo DVD, 2000's Scooby-Doo's Creepiest Capers, and 2001's Scooby-Doo's Spookiest Tales, which had 3 Where Are You episodes and 1 episode of the Scooby-Doo show. Side note, I remember the Halloween season of 2000 when Warner released Creepiest Capers for their Halloween video collection. For whatever reason, in the trailer they used clips of Zombie Island, and I don't know, it was weird. In 2002, to promote the live-action movie, WB re-released many of their current Scooby-Doo VHS and DVDs. Aside from new previews, the biggest clue it was a reprint was the Cartoon Network logo being replaced by the Warner Brothers Family Entertainment logo. Many of the early DVDs would come in these snap cases. I don't think they exist now, but I admit I have a ton of nostalgia for them. In March 2004, just in time for the release of Scooby-Doo 2, WB released Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, the complete first and second seasons, as part of the Hanna-Barbera Golden Collection, featuring all 25 episodes from the classic series, digitally remastered and restored, and the first time they were released in chronological order. It's a decent release. My only hang-up is they could have done better with the special features. I don't know, when I think of the other HB shows that had complete series releases, they really outdid themselves with the bonus content. Animation still galleries, featurettes, commentaries by animation historians. Here, we just get a bunch of mid-content from previous releases. The only one worth a damn is the Ultimate Fans featurette. In 2007, WB released the last season of the Scooby-Doo show as the complete 3rd season. The reason, I guess, is that the episodes originally aired under the Scooby-Doo Where Are You name, back in 1978. Why is the Scooby-Doo show opening and closing credits are intact here, I don't know. Hanna-Barbera From H to B, the documentary about Hanna-Barbera, is probably worth the price of the DVD alone. The first and second seasons, and the false 3rd season, will be re-released many times as the complete series, once in 2010, which I remember being a teen in high school, having my first summer job, and that being one of the things I brought with my paycheck. The DVD set in 2018, the 2019 Blu-ray commemorating the 50th anniversary of the franchise, packaged in a mansion set, which I proudly own, and a 2022 regular Blu-ray. Side note, if you ever get the complete series Blu-ray, check out the DVD feature about Frank Welker. It's really good. As the years went on, there will be several other small releases from the Kids TV Favorites line, and even a 3-disc pack for the Video Now. Remember those? In early 2009 to 2010, Warner released Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. They stopped at 4. My guess is because they had plans to release the complete series anyway. Each DVD features an episode from Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue as a bonus feature. The show wasn't a big hit, and I'm guessing the previous volumes didn't sell well, because they were content of just slapping random episodes on DVDs and just calling it a day. Then came the 13th Spooky Tales series, from 2012 to 2015. These DVDs were usually a collection of 13 episodes from various Scooby series with a certain theme, like traveling around the world, Christmas, Halloween, robots, and sports. Some of the DVDs will be accompanied by a special produced by Warner Bros. Animation and the current team behind the Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies. And they were usually related to the DVD's theme. These were fine. I don't remember any of them leaving that much of an impact, but they're harmless. I'm guessing they discontinued the line because they wanted to focus more on their DVD movies. There were some other compilation DVDs released, but nothing special. Most of them were just something cheap to get out there, or just repackaged editions for previous releases. One of the most recent compilation DVDs was another release during the 50th anniversary, Best of Warner Brothers Scooby-Doo 50 Cartoon Collection. This was a 5-disc set featuring memorable episodes from each Scooby-Doo series. Because several generations grew up with Scooby, there's something for everyone in this set. I definitely recommend it. Scooby-Doo cartoons will be featured in other compilations from WB. Where Are You? Jeepers is the Creeper would appear in 2001's Cartoon Crack-Ups, basically the best of Hanna-Barbera. And new Scooby-Doo movies, The Ghostly Creep from the Deep, appeared in 2009's Saturday Morning Cartoons Volume 2. And if you love the days of Saturday morning cartoons, I highly recommend getting it. By the way, where's your 90s edition, Warner Brothers? Scooby's history in home video is fascinating on how it evolved over the years. Even if streaming is the hot new thing, I still can't let go of my physical media, especially my Scooby-Doo DVDs. Maybe because it does hold sentimental value. What were some of the Scooby-Doo videos you had growing up? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm Fully Silver Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo! Coming soon to own on video.
It was the 90s, when straight-to-video movies became a lucrative market. While these were mocked for their low quality and shoddy production values, they still turned in huge profits. And while the concept of straight-to-video has been around since the 80s, one could argue it didn't take off until 1994, with the release of Disney's direct-to-video sequel to their then most popular film, Aladdin, called The Return of Jafar. The film was a hit, selling 15 million copies, and Disney would spend the rest of the decade dominating the market with their long line of direct-to-video sequels that brought in the big bucks. Pocahontas 2, Lion King 2, Cinderella 2, Little Mermaid 2, and so on and so on. Other children/family franchises would also get in the act. Since the long line of Land Before Time sequels, home videos aimed at preschoolers based on the hit television series Barney and Friends, CG animated films starring Mattel's Barbie, movies starring the then popular Olsen twins, as well as sequels to films that originally underperformed at the box office on its original release, but became sleeper hits on home video, like The Swan Princess. It was deep into the mid-90s. Hanna-Barbera were ready to revitalize their classic characters while simultaneously creating new TV shows for the then new cable channel Cartoon Network. Ideas were tossed around such as a Jetsons revival and a Top Cat revival, which Seth MacFarlane was involved. Scooby-Doo, who had a resurgence in popularity at the time, was given top priority due to his high Q score. As HB's parent company, Turner, was merged into Time Warner, Warner Bros. Would focus their attention on the most popular Hanna-Barbera character, that meddling mutt Scooby, starting with a new movie. Funny enough, this was just around the time the marketing blitz for the Johnny Quest revival bombed hard. Keep in mind, despite Scooby's popularity and reruns on Cartoon Network, the franchise was pretty much dormant for most of the 90s. The only other new Scooby production was the Hanna-Barbera crossover TV movie, The Forgotten Arabian Nights. The idea was for this new film to have a theatrical release, but WB wanted this to be a dual format release for Warner Home Video instead. This will result in the first of a long line of Scooby-Doo DTVs, and my personal favorite, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, which will be followed by Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, and Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. These films feature the Mystery Inc. gang, reimagined as young adults who go up against real supernatural threats. They were darker, had more threatening villains, and had animation that was definitely a departure from the classic cartoons. Props to Japanese animation studio Mook, who did work on other Hanna-Barbera projects, like The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest and SWAT Cats. The films also had huge marketing campaigns. I praise Zombie Island enough, so I'm not going to linger, but when I think of the dark Scooby-Doo done right, this is the first that comes to mind. The atmosphere, the characters, the tone, the music, everything was just perfect. Their performances were also phenomenal. Frank Welker, the only original cast member to return, Scott Ennis, Billy West, the late Mary Kay Bergman, and B.J. Ward all do a great job of breathing new life into the classic gang. Witch's Ghost is also a fun time, in which the highlights include the introduction of the three most popular recurring characters in the franchise, the Hex Girls, as well as a memorable Tim Curry performance. But he's Tim Curry, he's always amazing. Alien Invaders is definitely the most underrated of the films. The best part of the movie is Shaggy and Scooby's relationship with a photographer named Crystal and her dog Amber, who turn out to be real aliens, who in a twist are the good guys, while the fake aliens turn out to be South agents who are scaring away people from the gold they found. You really feel for Shaggy and Scooby here, and you believe they're in love too, even putting their cowardly instincts aside to protect them, or at least attempt to protect them. It's really sweet. The fake aliens have memorable design too. I always thought their heads looked like broccoli. I'm actually surprised how groovy isn't a well-known song in our fan base. Listening to it again is actually a very nice tune, and Scott Ennis really sells it. The weakest of the films would definitely have to be Cyber Chase. I loved this film growing up, but watching it as an adult, I do see more of the flaws. The idea is really cool, with Mystery Inc. being zapped in their college friend's computer game while chasing a deadly phantom virus. The settings and environments during each level are very creative, but a lot of things don't make sense. Why would the inventor of the virus be dumb enough to give it a love of baseball like him? And say if he was able to scare Eric off successfully and win the prize money, what would he have done about the deadly virus walking around? Shaggy for some reason doesn't notice his long metal magnet in his pocket he could have used any time? Even the Phantom Virus, while he does have a nice design and voiced by a great actor, he's a little inconsistent. Sometimes he can be very threatening, but other times he's a slapstick clown. The best part of the whole movie is the gang meeting their cyber counterparts, which are their teen selves from the original series, though Cyber Shaggy has his 13th ghost attire. Seeing them all interact and work together, I'll admit it's pretty cool. It's in no way horrible, and it's definitely the best looking of the films visually, but out of all four of the early films, this is one I simply like for nostalgia. All these movies will premiere on Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater blog a month after their home video release, and garner big ratings for the channel. For reasons we won't get into here, Cyber Chase was the last Scooby production helmed by the original crew of the films, headed by Davis Doy. A new writer was forced on the team, which led to them departing. At the same time, Hanna-Barbera would be absorbed into Warner Bros. Animation after William Hanna's death. Prior to that, HB and WB operated separately, with most of HB's productions, namely the early Scooby movies, made at the Imperial Bank building. With a new WB animation head, the next Scooby movie, Onward, will be fully made by Warner Bros. Animation. Scott Gerald, a huge Scooby-Doo fan since childhood and who worked on several Scooby-Doo shows in the late 80s, would helm the next two films, Scooby-Doo and the Legend of the Vampire and Scooby-Doo and the Monster of Mexico. These movies went back to basics. The darker tone was gone, and the films would be a throwback to the original Where Are You series, complete with the return of old sound effects, remixes of Ted Nichols' original score, and a much more flat art style similar to the original series, and a return of the original voice cast, with the notable exception of the deceased Don Messick. The gang were de-aged back to teenagers again, and were given the original outfits and the original Mystery Machine again. In addition, the real monsters gimmick was dropped, and it was back to the guy in a mask formula. As a kid, I was conflicted on this change. Sure, I love and adore Where Are You, but I was just getting used to the more darker films. Legend of the Vampire was definitely my favorite of the two. I remember getting it on my 10th birthday. I loved the Australia setting, and Daniel and his grandfather, Malcolm, are great characters. It was even nice to see the Hex Girls again, even if their inclusion doesn't make much sense continuity-wise. It's a good movie, but I'm not gonna lie, I would have definitely loved the original Scrap plot more. I don't have much thoughts on Monster of Mexico. It's one of the Scooby movies I could take or leave. I remember watching it when it premiered on Cartoon Network's main movie month, and not really much was memorable. I guess there is some expanded culture for kids, which is always nice. Well, on to the next era. On September 14th, 2002, Scooby-Doo made his much anticipated return to Saturday morning in What's New Scooby-Doo, which aired on Kids WB from 2002 to 2006. Because of this, the direct-to-video movies would be made in the same style as What's New for the rest of the decade, even when the show ended. These movies were, for the most part, extended episodes of What's New, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. Several of them were actually entertaining, like Scooby-Doo and the Loch Ness Monster, which featured the gang in Scotland visiting Daphne's cousin and going after the legendary Loch Ness Monster, terrorizing the town just in time for the Highland Games. I remember this movie for its memorable chase scenes. They're really well done. Aloha, Where's My Mummy, Pirates Ahoy, Chill Out, and Samurai Sword, they're okay in my opinion, but there are some things I love about each movie. Virginia Madsen is over the top as Cleopatra in Where's My Mummy. I love the designs of the tiki monsters in Aloha and the Hawaiian setting. Fred's parents in Pirates Ahoy are pretty likable characters, and really are the first I think of when I think about his family. I love some of the side characters, the Abominable Snowman and the Alfred Molina villain in Chill Out, and the fight scenes in Samurai Sword are pretty well done. And the Mayumi character is pretty cute too. My favorite during this era would definitely be Goblin King. The story is really creative. Shaggy and Scooby must travel to the underworld to retrieve a staff from the Goblin King after a magician they pissed off earlier gets magic powers from a fairy he captured, who is the Goblin King's daughter. Said staff will put an end to his evil magic, but they must return before sunrise, before the whole town becomes cursed forever. The other members of Mystery Inc. are sidelined here, and it becomes a Scooby and Shaggy adventure, similar to the 80s movies. I like a lot of the ideas here, like the train they take where they have to disguise as monsters, and the cars that can make mythical creatures and objects appear. I love the bar scene, which features familiar monsters from Where Are You, the Scooby-Doo show, and What's New. There's a lot of memorable voice talent here too. Wayne Knight as a greedy villain, that's a no-brainer. Tim Curry as a Goblin King, how can you go wrong with that? Jim Belushi as a comedic henchman, Wallace Shawn, Jay Leno, Hollywood legend Laura Bacall, and the Heroes era Hayden Panettiere. It's a lot of fun, and I make a point to watch it every Halloween. Some of these movies even have special features on the DVD by National Geographic, where the kids at home can learn all about the Loch Ness legend, mummies, and Hawaiian culture. Samurai Sword was the last of the What's New era. Afterwards, Casey Kasem retired from the role as Shaggy. Some of the former directors would move on to other projects, and a new decade was right around the corner. Former Cartoon Network Vice President Sam Register would become an Executive Vice President of Warner Bros. Animation, later being promoted to President in 2020. He would executive produce all the Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies from here on in. Warner Bros. Animation regulars Spike Brandt and Tony Savoni, whose notable work include developing the Duck Dodger series for CN, would direct the first 2 Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies of 2010, and would later produce the following 3. The last Scooby-Doo movie they directed together would be 2015's Kiss Rock and Roll Mystery. It was also around this time the acclaimed Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated series debuted on Cartoon Network, which they both developed with Mitch Watson. The style of the movies will be a mix of the darker Zombie Island look and a retro Where Are You style, complete with utilizing Iwo Takamoto's design for the classic game, brought to life by the always amazing Dan Haskett. The first film of the new decade was Abracadabra Doo, where Scooby and a gang visit Velma's sister, who's studying at a magic academy, haunted by a griffin. Madeline is a fun character, and their chemistry with Shaggy is really sweet. The second, and my personal favorite of this era, is Camp Scare. I love the camp setting, the new characters, the surprise villain, and the shoutouts to the Friday the 13th series. Legend of the Phantosaur has a good subplot of Shaggy being under hypnosis and being brave whenever he hears the word bad. And for those wondering, yes, this is the one that inspired the Ultra Instinct Shaggy memes. Music of the Vampire had good songs, especially done with monsters and Scooby and Me. I remember not caring for Big Top that much, but it's fine. With Casey Kasem's retirement, who will be the new voice of Shaggy? All the past Shaggys would audition to replace Kasem, but it was Matthew Lillard from the live action films who won the role. Ironic considering he was embarrassed by the films.
If you need to in your retirement years, you can pick up the voice for the future cartoons and things like that.
If it gets that bad, yeah. If I end up going off to do cartoons, if this is the end of me, yeah, I got Shaggy up my sleeve.
I gotta say, he's really good. Not quite an impression of Kasem, but he does make it his own thing. And as much as I love Casey and was glad they were able to keep him as long as they could, you could tell how old he was getting. And it's pretty distracting when you watch some of the later 2000 stuff. Matt Lillard was able to make Shaggy sound hip and young again. I appreciate Matthew for sticking with the character for so long. And for someone who was originally ashamed of the role, I'm glad he had a change of heart and embrace Shaggy and take the character and the role seriously. Matthew, you the man. The rest of the 2010s decade saw the Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies an experimental period with different writers and directors, and it becomes apparent they were pretty much given free rein to do whatever they wanted with the series. I remember these films were particularly more self-aware than the previous eras. They would do everything from WWE wrestlers, Legos, puppets, another Batman crossover, Bobby Flay, Kiss, etc. Some ideas were new and inventive, like Mask of the Blue Falcon takes place at a Comic-Con, with the Blue Falcon from Dynamite Dog Wonder as a washed-up actor, and the convention being invaded by the ghost of Mr. Hyde, a villain from that show. I love how Franken-Creepy showed villains from the original cartoons teaming up in an elaborate scheme to take down a gang. Though I will admit, the fast editing did get old after a while. Moon Monster Madness had a funny Malcolm McDowell performance and little nods to Alien. And the Kiss crossover is so batshit insane and out there, it's kinda humorous. This era has some low points though. I never cared for stage fright. Where this American Idol / America's Got Talent type show takes place, and most of the focus is Daphne and Fred's will they or won't they relationship. And honestly, I don't care. Of course the most good-looking members of the gang are gonna get together, get on with it. The romance drama made up the worst parts of Mystery Incorporated too. I don't care for wrestling, but I will admit, I wouldn't know who John Cena was if it wasn't for WrestleMania Mystery. The Scooby-Doo franchise celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2019 with DVD and Blu-ray releases, as well as new movies that were throwbacks to classic material. Curse of the 13th Ghost and Return to Zombie Island. When I saw the trailer for Curse of the 13th Ghost, I was excited. The 13th Ghost of Scooby-Doo was one of my favorite Scooby-Doo series. It'll be amazing to see what they can do with it, especially wrapping up loose ends. Then I saw it, and was disappointed. And I know it's weird saying that as an adult, but hear me out. The biggest problem was that the film flat out ignored the real monsters element from the show. The missing 13th Ghost turned out to be another guy in a mask, Vincent Van Gogh's friend, who we assumed died at the beginning. It seems like it was all for naught. Velma gets so unlikable here, constantly in denial about the real ghost, despite the fact she wasn't even there to witness it. Pretty smug about it too. I was glad to see an older, less annoying flim-flam, and Maurice LaMarche does a great job imitating Vincent Price, but this movie left me feeling cold. Though the worst of the series would definitely be Return to Zombie Island. It's generally bad and should just be avoided. The sheriff from the last movie, who forbid the gang to solve any more mysteries, suggests they take a vacation to take their mind on their early retirement. Shaggy conveniently happens to win a trip to an island resort, but it looks like a bayou than an island paradise. And the name of it is Moon Star. Get it? Not Moon Scar? This couldn't be the same island we went to back when we were adults, was it? Shaggy and Scooby make Fred, Daphne, and Velma promise to not mention or solve any more mysteries. It hurts to say this, but it's really hard to like Scooby and Shaggy here. All this stuff happening and you're worried about a promise? They do this really cheap flashback showing scenes from the first film reanimated to fit the current movie style, and it makes me want to watch that movie again. And because the gang are de-aged as teens, Daphne's syndicated talk show is now a school project. Not only does it not make any sense, but it's definitely an insult to her character. They all stay at Simone's old mansion, which is erroneously called a hotel, and they meet the worst character in the movie, Alan Smithy, a movie director, who wants the gang to star in his film. A lot happens here. There's the Moon Scar Island treasure that was implied to never be found, actors resembling characters from the original film, for some reason one stunt double, more cat creatures that turn out to be bad guys in masks, except for one who they imply to be real, but by then it's a little too late. Also, Alan goes nuts and burns their only means to escape, and probably the driver as well. But the next scene, he's perfectly fine. He was so passionate about the movie he was making, but yet he later goes fucking and takes the treasure for himself. What are you doing here, movie? Big shock, I hated this movie. Next to the Velma series, it's definitely one of the worst Scooby-Doo productions. I don't recommend it. In 2020, the 34th Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movie was released. Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo. This movie reveals the sheriff from the last two films as the villain behind all the events that happened, and it puts an end to Velma's skeptical arc. It even features appearances from Batman's Scarecrow, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Elvira! Yep, that's right, Elvira. And they utilized her much better than they did in Return to Zombie Island. It was a major improvement from the previous two films. Billy and Mandy creator Maxwell Adams wrote and directed this entry, and brings a lot of the irreverent humor from that show in this one. A minor issue I have is I feel they're trying to make the Mystery Incorporated universe the entire Scooby-Doo series universe now. I kinda like how the Mystery Incorporated timeline was its own thing. Apparently the gang's hometown is now in Crystal Cove instead of Coolsville, and it, along with Fred's mayor dad, is even mentioned in the next movie. And I don't think it's really needed, but that's just my opinion. I say give this one a watch, especially during the Halloween season. Sword and Scoob is another one I put in the okay category. It has the gang traveling to England, and it turns out Shaggy is descended from a knight who stopped Morgan Le Fay from taking over King Arthur's throne, as the meddling kids time warp into medieval times. There's a few highlights of this. Jason Isaac is hilarious as King Arthur, ditto for Nick Frost as Merlin, and some of their jokes you really have to pay attention to. I love the shoutouts to Ruby and Spears' Thundar series. What they do with it at the end is pretty dumb, and this line is cute.
Like, I don't want to own real estate.
You don't?
Man, no way. Do you know how many creepy, evil people we've met that do weird things just for a piece of land?
I remember this film for its weird color design. Everyone looks way too bright. Also, it's another one of those the supernatural wasn't real or wasn't movies. The way it's revealed the gang didn't time travel is actually kind of funny. It reminds me of that Ed, Edd and Eddy episode where the Eds trick Rolf into believing he's back in the old country. It's almost like that. The biggest surprise came later that year with the release of Straight Outta Nowhere, Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog. This could have not worked, but it did. I said before I love both of these series, and there's enough of this movie for fans of both franchises, with tons of Easter eggs galore. It's a fun movie. For having no involvement for John H. Dilworth, the team really did their homework at recreating the world of Courage. It was so great to see these characters again and hear the same music cues again. It just puts a smile on my face. This would be the last time Thea White, the voice of Muriel, will perform the character, as she passed away before its release. I say the only major low point is that stupid rap. Yeah, that's pretty lame. The next film, and my second favorite after Zombie Island, would be 2022's Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo. You might remember this film making headlines because it finally showed Velma as a lesbian. And literally that's all anyone talked about when this movie came out. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad people have the representation, but everyone forgot about how enjoyable this movie was. They switched up the art style yet again, and take it from the Guess Who series. I saw the trailer and didn't think much of it, but then when I watched it and saw the opening, I was blown away how fluid the animation was. They must have put more money into these, because I watched the Guess Who series and they never moved like this. The story is fantastic. The gang finds out all their costumes worn by their past foes were created by one person, fashion designer Coco Diablo, who Velma is instantly smitten with. They finally catch her and send her to prison, but it turns out with Coco gone, the gang are stuck with no mystery to solve and resort to solving minor crimes like tax schemes. This doesn't bode well for Fred, who's itching to solve another case. They get attacked by ghosts that resembles the Mystery Inc. gang, and it turns out they need Coco's help, but can they trust her? There's a lot I really like here. Instead of what if the gang randomly got the wrong person, the movie asks, what if the gang were too good at their jobs and the person responsible for the mystery solving capers is out of the picture? I like how they focus more on the gang missing solving mysteries. I love the opening credits featuring a melancholy version of the Where Are You theme. I really love Coco. Her design, the way she moves, her personality, the way she flirts with Velma, she's just perfect. Anthony Carrington from Barry even has a funny role as one of Coco's employees. There's so much fun expressions, posing, and movement animation here, and nice colors and lighting too. And look at these backgrounds. I never thought the Guess Who style could look this appealing. At one point, they play Ballroom Blitz during the chase scene. I'm trying to think of the last Scooby-Doo movie to ever use a licensed song. I don't think that's happened since What's New. I love the scene with all the past villains escape from the penitentiary to wreak havoc on Halloween. So it's not going to go the way you think. They even make a joke about that. It's fun, it's funny, it's beautifully animated. I really enjoyed this. Much like with Goblin King, this is going to be my Halloween tradition for me. It seems like the Scooby-Doo directed video movies will be held by this team, and if that's the case, I'm really hyped. I can't wait to see what's next. Unfortunately, due to Warner Discovery and Zaslav being tax write-off happy, the next film, Haunted High Rise, was the more recent victim of it. It would have featured the return of the Hex Girls, along with new songs. I really hope this will be reversed, and the team can finish the movie, because I really want to see it, and I know you do too. There was another film written off that recently leaked, Scooby-Doo and Crypto 2. I'm not going to show clips, because I don't want WB on my back, but shortest review in the world, I thought it was fine. And there you have it, the evolution of the Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies. These have been going on for 24 years now, it's amazing. And minus Lego films, I've seen pretty much all of them. These films help Scooby-Doo reach a new audience for each generation and have kept the brand alive for years. It just goes to show whether you're a ghost, a monster, or an incompetent CEO, You'll never stop Scooby and the gang. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
Ever since the 90s and especially the 2000s, live-action adaptations of popular cartoons have been a dime a dozen, haven't they? There have been some good ones, and there have been some really, really bad ones. But out of all of them, the most iconic would definitely be the live-action adaptation of the Hanna-Barbera classic, Scooby-Doo. The movie was a big hit for Warner Brothers and spawned several sequels, but in recent years, it's gotten a bit of a resurgence from young adults who grew up with it as kids. But why? It definitely wasn't the first of these live-action adaptations. You don't hear anyone speaking that fondly over something like Garfield or those horrendous Alvin and the Chipmunk movies, or, well, let's leave that alone. But there's something in these live-action films, the first two anyway, that struck a chord with people, and I'm gonna find out what it is. This is my review of all the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, from theatrical to TV to direct-to-video. Let's get started. First, a little history. The idea of a live-action Scooby-Doo film had been floating around since the early 90s. Universal, who had a partnership with Hanna-Barbera at the time, were going to release it in conjunction with Turner Pictures. It was one of the many projects proposed by Hanna-Barbera studio head David Kirshner. It was even teased in the Universal Studios Florida ride, The Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera.
Sorry, Dastardly, but Elroy's next, followed by the Flintstones. Yeah! Then Scooby-Doo.
A script was written by Greg Titley as early as 1996. The plot would have been about an origin story of the gang meeting in college and working together to stop an ancient demon on a school campus. I read the script and it's actually pretty entertaining. Almost wish this was the film we got. You can definitely tell the writer is a huge Scooby-Doo fan and Hanna-Barbera in general. As Turner merged with Time Warner and Warner Brothers took over, the movie spent the rest of the decade in development hell, tossed from writers, directors, and actors like Jim Carrey, who was at one point considered to play Shaggy. Given how big Carrey was at the time, I can only imagine how expensive he would have been. Actress and comedian Janeane Garofalo was originally in talks to play Velma, but one name frequently mentioned was comedian and Scooby-Doo fan Mike Myers, who wrote a script with Jay Coogan in 1998 and was lined up to play Shaggy until his script was rejected and had to bow out. Kevin Smith was also attached to write the film and also left when his partner Scott Moser declined to co-write. But that was also the time he had his sights set on the Nicolas Cage Superman movie. Voice actor Hadley Cage, who had voiced Scooby and Johnny Bravo, was originally hired to voice him in the film, until the studio made some changes.
Like I said, there was no big project until about 2 years into doing it. You know, they just call me in to do these little things. And then they finally said, congratulations, your big movie is coming. Warner Brothers has bought the rights to do the movie with, and this is the one that was with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Right. Yeah.
And Freddie Prinze Jr. And I was like, that's it. This is what I've been an actor since I was 5.
My moment is coming. Yeah.
I was like 28, 29 at the time, and I felt like my ticket has come in. You know, and William Hanna himself picked me. I was beating out guys who, these guys are my idols, you know, like people from The Simpsons. The guy from Full House, Joey. And then once Warner Brothers got involved, unfortunately, you know, that's when more people get involved and they want their people. Originally, they wanted to attach a star to Scooby-Doo.
Right.
And I wasn't. And back then, they wanted bigger names to sell big movies. So, well, they still do, but especially in animation. So they couldn't actually find anyone to do it, but I was out of the running.
Finally, in October 2000, Warner Brothers greenlit the film and shooting began in Australia February 2001. Scooby himself had a bit of resurgence at the time, with reruns dominating Cartoon Network and home videos and merchandise selling well. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. In the director's chair was Roger Gosnell, whose films are, Another one of the newcomers was writer James Gunn, fresh off of Troma Films' Tromeo and Juliet. James was a huge fan of the original cartoon and was set on writing a straight-up parody, not unlike the Brady Bunch movie. Gunn, in a 2017 Facebook post, revealed how far the original script went in terms of tone and raunchy humor, with many drug and sex references to give it an R rating, and CGI used to cover up cleavage. I don't think it worked. And Velma at one point was going to be a lesbian, and was going to share a kiss with Daphne. In context of the film, it was during the soul swapping scene, and for some reason the kiss was going to get their souls back into their own bodies. I know a lot of people were thrilled about this and thought we were robbed of good lesbian rep, but given the time period, I couldn't help but be a bit skeptical. But then I read an interview James Gunn did with Starlog magazine, and he had this to say. I seriously did 80 drafts of the script and worked on this movie for 2 years. In some drafts, Velma's sexuality was more overt than others, and there were some other things were shot that were more overt. I was like, so what if she's a lesbian? I think she is, and Velma is a positive role model. She's awesome. The human members of Mystery Inc. were portrayed by some of the hottest young superstars at the time. Matthew Lillard, known for his roles as Scream in SLC Punk, played Shaggy. Wing Commander and She's All That star Freddie Prinze Jr. played Fred, and Daphne was portrayed by his fiancée turned wife, Buffy the Vampire Slayer herself, the beautiful Sarah Michelle Gellar. Christina Ricci at one point was considered for Velma, until the role went to Freaks and Geeks star Linda Cardellini. Scooby-Doo was brought to light with CGI from now defunct studio Rhythm and Hues. I remember as a kid being in awe of all the things that went into bringing him to life. Scott Ennis, who was the then current voice at the time, was brought in to voice Scooby and recorded most of his dialogue, until he was replaced by Australian stuntman Neil Fanning, who did the voice on set with the actors.
Bored and like, do it again, huh?
Yeah, man.
Now let's get to the movie. First off, I really love how this movie opens. It does have the look and feel of a classic Scooby episode. It doesn't last long, as a fight breaks up the gang and they go their separate ways. Personally, I thought this was done better in Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. They all receive invitations to solve a mystery at a popular resort, Spooky Island. Think of it as a Tim Burton Disneyland, owned by the eccentric Emil Monteverdes, played by Rowan Atkinson. And to clear this up once and for all, no, Tim Curry wasn't originally interested in this role and left once he learned Scrappy was going to be in a movie. They all discovered that real demons are haunting the island. Now the gang must put their differences aside to save the world as Scooby-Doo, who the demons are planning to sacrifice. I know you all love this movie, I do too, but taking nostalgia aside, it's a bit of a mess. None of the live action films are what I consider good films, but this one especially has no idea what it wanted to be or who it wanted to appeal to. And sometimes it's a bit too cynical for its own good. I personally admire the wholesomeness of the original series, but I get it, it's a new decade, and audiences want the movies and shows they love to grow up with them. That's not to say I'm against self-parody in general. Some of the best Scooby media has those elements, but when it gets too much, it becomes too cynical, and it becomes, well, this.
Because nothing's trashier or more pedo-tinged than teens in an old van.
God, I fucking hate you. I think the handling of Scrappy-Doo as the villain is a good example. This might have been funny to the very vocal Scrappy haters who are no doubt adults, but if you were 9 years old like I was at the time this came out, you probably would be confused on why Scrappy and the gang are so hostile towards each other. Even more confused if you were unaware of the Scrappy hate and put off by his behavior. When watching it again, the Burbot fart scene goes on a little too long, and the CG monster effects are really bad. Like, wow. But there are some things I love about the movie. One is, big shock, the performances. Matthew Lillard will always be my live-action Shaggy. He gets his voice and mannerisms down to a T. Given how he's the only actor to have the most scenes with Scooby, you really believe he's having a conversation with his CG talking dog. He was so good, Warner Brothers even lobbied for Lillard to receive a Golden Globe nomination. I'm dead serious. It's no surprise Matthew went on to become the current voice of Shaggy once Casey Kasem retired from the role in 2009. I also feel Linda's Velma deserves some credit as well, perfectly replicating the brainy but deadpan snark Velma had in the original. In addition, I love David Newman's score. Some of the side characters are memorable, and some of the jokes are really funny. Another reason I love this movie is it's a weird time capsule of the early 2000s. References to slang and fashion of the era, Little Romeo and Baha Man on the soundtrack, even cameos from Prime Pamela Anderson and Sugar Ray. The movie is in a trifecta of films that represent the early 2000s, like Josie and the Pussycats and Clock Stoppers. It's nostalgically dated, but it has its charm. I really love the gothic set design, but I can see how it can be distracting for some. WB promoted the movie like mad. You saw TV spots on all the major kids stations. Dairy Queen sold Scooby-Doo toys with their kids' meals. The cast were seen on talk shows and the 2002 Kids' Choice Awards. Kids WB aired episodes of the original series to help promote the film. Even Minute Maid had sweepstakes we could win a trip to Australia where the movie was filmed. Not to mention a hit soundtrack and an Outkast music video. The movie was finally released June 14th, 2002, and while many critics gave the movie very negative reviews, including Roger Ebert, who had even admitted to not even seeing the original, the movie was a huge hit at the box office, earning about $275 million worldwide. Yeah, for the longest time I had a love-hate relationship with this movie, but now I can just come around to loving it again. It's incredibly flawed and cluttered, but I see it as a guilty pleasure. And yeah, maybe that R-rated cut doesn't exist, or maybe we'll never be able to find those deleted scenes.
I still haven't found my friend.
Oh, don't worry. She'll turn up. Unless she's dead.
But I still say the movie is a lot of fun. And maybe I can see why it developed such a huge cult following. Now the Ultra Instinct Shaggy memes? Yeah, I'll never understand those. I enjoy the performances, I enjoy the early 2000s cheesiness, and even taking the nostalgia out, I still enjoy the movie. If you're a Scooby-Doo fan, there's definitely a lot to like and a lot to be annoyed by, but I still recommend checking it out. I give it 3 boxes of Scooby Snacks. 2 years later, we were given a sequel, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. This one I remember liking a lot more. In this film, Mystery Inc., who are now the town's celebrities, take down a masked figure who resurrect the ghosts and monsters from the past. If that wasn't bad enough, they also have to deal with a Slimer reporter trying to tarnish their good name. James Gunn was the sole writer this time, and it seemed like he had control to do what he wanted. Gone was the dark humor, the mean-spiritedness, the adult humor, and the drug references. Okay, maybe not all gone. In my opinion, this film succeeds where the last film failed, and where the whole film just feels like a tribute to Scooby-Doo. Not only due to the appearances of the classic monsters, but also recreating settings and classic gags from the show. Because there weren't any executive meddling this time, this movie had more of an identity. Once again, all the actors give fantastic performances. This movie feels bright and colorful compared to the last film, where the colors look a little dull. It's really cool seeing all the villains from the classic show, but much like Cyberchase, it's really just the more popular ones, rather than all of them. Like the Black Knight Ghost, the 10,000 Volt Ghost, Minor 49er, even Chicken Star for a pup named Scooby-Doo. My friends JB and Millie actually interviewed some of the crew from the live action films, and apparently more monsters from the cartoon were going to have a role, or at least made an appearance, before they were cut, most likely due to budget. There's a lot of cool stuff in this movie. I like the shot of Redbeard's ghost ship floating down Coolsville, and I like the idea of a hangout where all the past villains go. There's a lot of laughs in this. Not all the jokes work, but when they do, it's hilarious. Especially this scene, it kills me every time.
Come on, Scooby-Doo! You're not being calm! I needed that. I needed that too. You're pushing your luck, Scoob.
The action and chase sequences are well done, and there are memorable performances from the side characters, like Seth Green, Alicia Silverstone, Tim Blake Nelson, and the late Peter Boyle. It can be heartwarming when it wants to as well. Shaggy and Scooby's subplot involved them wanting to be better detectives, and before the chase scene, Velma gives them a speech of how they're perfect the way they are. There's actually a deleted scene on the DVD where instead of Velma, we get a moment with Shaggy talking to Scooby, assuring each other that even if they don't make it, they'll always have each other. This scene is really touching, and Matthew Lillard and Neil Fanny's performances really sell it. Much like the first film, it dreads the early 2000s cheesiness, and you don't mind because it really works. I mean, when your movie has a cameo for then American Idol winner Ruben Studdard, and the soundtrack has Simple Plan, Big Broves, and Clay Aiken, what can you do? Speaking of soundtrack, the film was marketed well, but not as big as the first one. I remember Burger King had some toys, and even Matthew Lillard and Linda Cardellini stopped by Cartoon Network's Fridays to promote the film.
We're a lot cooler than you.
And both live action films had a good run on TV, running every year on ABC Family's 13 Nights of Halloween, And the first film even had its network premiere on Nickelodeon of all places. Looking back, it's not that great, but I'm in the minority of those who liked it better than the first film. I give it 4 boxes of Scooby Snacks. Before we continue, if you like this or any of my other videos, I would ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon, where every dollar goes to production like software expenses and getting these out on a regular basis. You could get early access, a special credit, shout out to a YouTube, Twitch, or blog, a commission by me. You could even request a Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry special for the Funtastic Legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes, which could be anything from this list. If you don't want to, you could also donate to me on Ko-fi. And liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and clicking the bell icon is much appreciated. Thank you all so much for your support. And now, back to the video.
Now arriving at Kids WB.
Toonami now begins with Scooby-Doo right here on Kids WB.
Scooby-Doo 2 was released March 2004 to even worse reviews and disappointing box office, which led to the third film being canceled by Warner Brothers and the cast and crew moving on to other projects, including writer James Gunn, who had a prominent career since then directing films such as Slither, Supers, and most famously, the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise for the MCU. In 2009, it was announced that Cartoon Network was airing a live-action prequel film with young actors to be directed by Brian Levant and released by the now-defunct Warner Premiere. I was in high school by the time this movie came out. Even though I still love Scooby-Doo, I thought this looked a little lame, but I was interested in checking it out anyway. I don't even think I was watching CN all that much at the time. It was during the channel's dark age in the late 2000s, and animation wasn't exactly high on their priority list.
It's no mystery who they are. And it's no mystery what they do. But do you know the mystery of how it all began?
We officially have a mystery on our hands.
Scooby-Doo, The Mystery Begins, coming this fall to Cartoon Network.
The film is an origin story on how the gang met in high school, and showing Scooby, voiced this time by Frank Welker, as a lonely homeless dog, who then meets the friendless Shaggy, and the two bond instantly. Through an altercation on the school bus, Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Shaggy wind up in detention, where they form the Breakfast Club, Power Rangers, Lemonade Mouth, you get the idea. All of them, at least Fred and the girls, find out they share a love of mysteries. 3 ghosts attack the school, and for some reason the principal blames them for what happened, and it gets suspended. Now the 4 teens, and their dog too, must investigate and clear their names. I honestly don't have much to say about this film. I honestly found it kind of forgettable. It definitely has the look and feel of a Disney Channel movie of the week. I noticed when fans fondly look back at the live action films, they never talk about the CN films. One reason is probably because they're pretty boring. None of the young actors bring that much to their characters. I know they're trying, but nothing really clicks. The only person that actually comes through is the actress playing Velma. That's future pop star and queer icon Hayley Kiyoko. She does look and sound like the character, and she gets the personality down too. I also think she's pretty cute. Fred and Daphne are just there, you can have anyone play them, and the actor playing Shaggy tries way too hard. The effects are awful. Granted, it's a TV budget, what can you do, but this is just, ugh. There's also some weird choices they make in the film that don't follow up on. Like in this movie, Daphne is an aspiring theater actress, Velma is revealed to have a crush on Fred, and Daphne likes him too. That goes nowhere. Even the villain is forgettable. I kind of forgot what his plan was. Is there anything I liked? Well, pretty much every role he's in, Frank Welker is fantastic as Scooby, per usual, especially with what little he's given to work with. I like how some of these people go on to be big stars, like Hayley Kiyoko and Robbie Amell, who I really enjoyed in Code 8 and the Babysitter movies. And it's also great to see Dr. Robotnik, aka Gary Chalk, in anything. And there are some jokes that get a laugh. The movie aired September 13th, 2009 on Cartoon Network, and to celebrate, CN brought back reruns of the original series in a marathon leading up to the film's premiere. At the time, it was the most watched Cartoon Network telecast in history, being watched by 6.1 million viewers. Overall, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's not the worst of the movies. I give it 2 boxes of Scooby Snacks. And now we come to the 4th film, Scooby-Doo Curse of the Lake Monster. Wow, what a mess.
Ah,
summertime. It's the season for fun in the sun and relaxing with your friends. But here in the town of Erie Point, there are even more things to do. Like run for your life, scream, or if you're lucky, you might even get to solve a mystery.
You know, right now, I bet most people think we just scream and run away. I may be right!
Scooby-Doo, Curse of the Lake Monster, coming this fall to Cartoon Network.
In this film, the gang gets summer jobs at a resort owned by Daphne's uncle that's being haunted by a frog monster, which is the work of an old witch that cursed the town using moon rocks. If that wasn't bad enough, it seems like Velma has been cursed while Shaggy sporadically falls in love with her and gets the courage to ask her out. I want to get into something that really annoys me with this film, and that's the relationship drama, which isn't something I want to see in Scooby-Doo. Granted, I didn't like it when they did it in Mystery Incorporated either, but I could see what they were going for. Here, this one-sided romance comes out of nowhere and it amounts to nothing anyway, so what's the point? There's also these weird random musical numbers that are just awkward, and Scooby barely has a role, and when he is there, he just provides some very poorly done slapstick. There's some cameos in this movie like SpongeBob's grandma, Marion Ross, the late Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek, and the late character actor Richard Mole, who you may know from Night Court, Batman the Animated Series, and my personal favorite, The 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowell. Anyone? Really? Man, I'm really showing my age. The climax is probably the dumbest of all the movies, and the ending? Wow. This is a dud, not worth checking out. It's a definite skip. I give it one Scooby snack. 2018's Daphne and Velma, released by Ashley Tisdale's production company Blonde Girl Productions, focuses on our two favorite heroines, Daphne and Velma, rather than the Scoob himself. A solo prequel story of how the two met before they joined Mystery Inc., with Daphne's rich family relocating and attending Velma's high school. A high-tech school of the future, sponsored by billionaire Tobias Bloom. But troubles are brewing when some of the school's brightest students become zombified. When I saw this announced, I was curious on what they were going to do, and was interested. Then I saw the trailer, and immediately apologized to the CN Films. While I do admire the female empowerment angle, I think it's a little half-assed, but it has its heart in the right place. The whole subplot of Daphne's dad sheltering her is unnecessary and kinda creepy. And Velma's coldness to Daphne only to find out she's trying to protect her. Even when they reconcile, you don't really buy it. You don't really see them as friends either. I'm not at all familiar with the lead actresses, but I've seen them in other stuff, and they work with what they're given here. I just wish it was good. The dialogue is just as cringy.
D&V, what's up? What's good?
It's also a very ugly movie. The colors clash with the bad art design, and even for a mystery, you can guess who the culprit is right away. I do like seeing familiar faces, like Arda Marine as Velma's aunt. I don't think I've seen her in anything since Mad TV. And Daphne's father, recognize him? That's Brian Stefanik, who you may remember as Arward from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and as the voice of Lynn Loud Sr. from The Loud House. So yeah, I'd skip this one too. I thought the plot was dumb, the characters are boring, and it could have had a message about the over-reliance of technology. But if you love Daphne and Velma and always wanted to see them in a solo adventure, you might like this, but you probably want better. I give it one box of Scooby snacks. Sorry if it feels like my review of the last three movies are all over the place. They were a little after my time, so naturally I have the least amount of feelings for them. And now it's been announced that a new live-action TV show is in the works from Netflix. Not much is known about it or who's even gonna be in it, but given how it's from the people behind Riverdale, it doesn't give me much hope. And I genuinely hope they don't turn Scooby-Doo into some cringy CN teen drama. But I'm an optimist, so I'll give it a chance. I wonder how it's going to affect the fan-made Mystery Incorporated series. Time will only tell. How do you feel about the live-action Scooby-Doo movies? And which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly. Well, I talked about the direct-to-video movies. Now let's talk about the Scooby-Doo TV specials and movies. During Scooby-Doo's successful run of Saturday mornings, naturally, it was decided that the meddling mutt would have a go in primetime on network TV and syndication. Now, I already talked about several specials like Arabian Nights and the Scooby-Doo Project, so this vid is going to cover the more famous ones. I saw these at a young age and I enjoyed them. But where did they sit with me as a huge Scooby-Doo fan all these years later? Well, Let's find out. Now, there was a proposed project from 1971 called Scooby-Doo Escape from Witch Island. Not much is known about what this was, or if it was supposed to be a special at all. Only thing that exists is concept art by HB artist Alvaro RC. But the very first Scooby special was 1979's Scooby Goes Hollywood, airing in prime time on ABC. In this special, the gang aren't the mystery-solving ghost hunters we all know and love. Instead, they're actors on a TV show, which of course is Scooby-Doo Where Are You? After days and days of doing the same routine, Shaggy gets fed up and sets out to get him and Scooby-Doo better roles and make Scooby a bigger star, while Scooby is unsure what to think of all this. The two head to the network president, voiced by Rip Taylor, to pitch ideas for a potential starring vehicle for Scooby. After a few efforts, he understandably doesn't take them seriously, so Shaggy and Scooby decide to leave the show, much to Fred, Dabney, and Velma's disappointment. The rest of the special is mostly Scooby and Shaggy pitching projects and trying to mingle in Hollywood, with every attempt failing miserably. Out of all the Scooby specials and movies, this one fans seem to remember the least, and to be fair, there's kind of a good reason. It's not that long, and it didn't really air on TV that much. The last airing I remember was on CN in 2009. My cousin had it on video, and I remember watching it every time we came to visit. And me being a huge Scooby-Doo fan, even I have to admit, it didn't leave that much of an impression. I think newer fans mostly get put off by the Hollywood hijinks plot, and the lack of mystery, but keep in mind this was made at the time when the Scooby formula was getting stale. Hell, Scrappy-Doo debuted around the time this aired. But still, I don't think this is what fans wanted to see. Scooby isn't Scooby without mystery, ghosts, monsters, or bad guys in masks. The movie Scoob had a similar problem. I think it's very telling on the old Scooby-Doo website, there's a false synopsis of the movie about a monster trying to stop a film Scooby is starring in. Also the fact that Shaggy is pretty unlikable here. When you look at what he wants to do, he's basically manipulating and exploiting Scooby just to get fame and fortune. That's not the laid-back dog food eating hippie we're all familiar with. I guess that's another reason why WB never pushes this one as much as some of the other Scooby stuff. Any good things? Well, Rip Taylor as CJ is pretty fun. There are some good moments, like Scooby's young fans rallying him to get him back to this old show, and the comeback Scooby-Doo sequence is really sweet. Also, it's a very 70s time capsule. There's spoofs of Happy Days, Charlie's Angels, Superman, and The Love Boat. References to celebrities like Johnny Carson. Even the musical numbers, especially Gotta Have Time, is drenched in 70s cheese. Not to mention the animation, while still very limited, have a very noticeable upgrade. TV cartoons back then didn't have huge budgets, but because this was in prime time, they could have the characters have more fluid movement than you would usually see on Saturday mornings. Overall, it's not bad, and there's better Scooby stuff out there, but if you're curious, I'd say check it out. Scooby would star in his very first full-length movie in 1987 called Scooby-Doo Meets the Boo Brothers, followed by Scooby-Doo in a Ghoul School and Scooby-Doo and a Reluctant Werewolf, all part of the Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10 syndication programming block. These came at a very interesting time in the franchise history. You see, after 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo was cancelled after one season, no new Scooby series aired on Saturday mornings for the next 2 years, and these movies were the only new Scooby productions made at the time. Many elements from 13 Ghosts were carried over for the films, such as Scrappy, Real Ghosts and Monsters, and Shaggy's infamous red shirt. In a way, they also feel like extended episodes of those Scooby and Scrappy shorts, where they just go on adventures and occasionally run into monsters. I grew up with all three of these movies, seeing how they aired on Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I had them on VHS as well, under the false moniker as an all-new movie. We opened with a very entertaining but also pretty pointless song number by an uncredited June Foray, as we see Shaggy and the dogs being chased out their home, and we first hear the infamous Boo Brothers.
Boo Brothers!
We find out Shaggy's uncle Colonel Beauregard left him his country estate, which is Southern Plantation, which means technically Shaggy's ancestors were, look, a gorilla. Yep, on their way they run into a gorilla who escaped from the zoo, and at the mansion they meet a sketchy sheriff and Shaggy's uncle's former butler, who wants the inheritance to himself. When their jeep is synced in quicksand, they notice some strange goings on in the mansion. On top of that, it turns out Shaggy's uncle hid a king's ransom worth of treasure on the property. So Shaggy and the dogs must find the treasure with the help of clues left by the colonel, and 3 ghostly siblings, the Boo brothers, Frigo, Shriko, and Miko, an obvious nod to the Three Stooges. So one of the more common criticisms of the Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10 is that they're a little too long, so there's a lot of filler and padding for the runtime. And the Scooby movies are no exception, especially Boo brothers. There's just too much going on. I didn't even mention the fact that the guys also have to deal with a rival family of the Beauregards, the gun-toting Billy Bob and his sister Sadie Mae, who has a crush on Shaggy.
Give me your ass, nigga.
The Boo brothers themselves are a little annoying, but they do become useful once in a while. Scrappy's pretty likable here. He does a lot of the thinking and finding almost all the clues. I remember the dark and spooky atmosphere, and out of all the TV specials and movies, this one does have the feel of classic Scooby, with a mystery to be solved and an unmasking at the end. This is the weakest of the Superstars 10 movies. It's a little long and cluttered with too many characters and subplots, but there's still some stuff worth checking out. Next was 1988 Scooby-Doo in a Ghoul School, where Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy become gym teachers at a school for ghouls, which they initially confused for girls. Side note, it's a nice touch to give Shaggy a more athletic occupation. I feel like modern Scooby media forgets he's a gymnast. The school is headed by Miss Grimwood, and they meet the students, Sabella, Winnie, Elsa, Phantasma, and Tanis. Unable to get out their contract, our heroes become coaches for the girls to get them ready for a volleyball tournament with a rival school. But an evil witch kidnaps the girls and brainwashes them to make them part of her crew. Now Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy must save the girls or face the wrath of their famous fathers. So somewhere around the 2010s, this movie garnered a huge cult following, mainly because of the Ghoul Girls themselves, and it's not hard to see why. They're all very unique with memorable personalities and designs. They seem to have taken a life of their own. There's fan art, cosplay, they even make an appearance on a Cartoon Network series, OKKO, with most of the original actors returning. The idea of a school full of monsters isn't anything new, but this is probably one of the better ones. With how popular the girls are, it makes you wonder why WB have never thought of bringing them back. They could have had their own Monster High franchise. Maybe they think they'll overshadow Scooby, I don't know. Like Boo Brothers, this one is very long and has filler, but you don't really mind much because you like spending time with these new characters, and the pacing is a bit better. I say the only low point is the villain is pretty dull. I kind of forgot what was the end game of her plan. The puns you're really gonna love or really hate. For me, many of these are so corny and forced, I just can't help but laugh.
I must be going batty. You bet I will. It's a bat. Picture of him.
This is bat news!
On one last note, in 2002, Warner Bros. Released this movie on DVD, but the trailers made it look like it was one of the then current Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies, with most of the clips being used from Zombie Island than the actual film. Yeah, Warner Bros. Loved doing this whenever they ever released older Scooby material back in the day. Seeing how these aired on CN once in a while, did they really think they'd fool us? Overall, it's a fun time, check it out. Now we get to the final Superstars 10 movie, and my personal favorite, 1988's Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. In this movie, it's revealed Shaggy for some reason is an accomplished race car driver with a girlfriend, Googie, which is good news for Dracula who needs a werewolf for his monster race. So during a full moon, he turns Shaggy into a werewolf and forces him to compete in the race, on the condition if he wins, he gets turned back to normal. But Dracula has no intention of holding up his end of the bargain. I really love how fun and creative this one is. All the monsters, and especially the monster cars, have really great designs, and the monster race is a send-up of wacky races, another Hanna-Barbera favorite of mine. On top of that, I think it's the funniest of all the movies. The monotone crowd is hilarious, the Hunch Bunch gets some laughs once in a while, but by far the funniest is Dracula. This is probably one of my favorite funny Draculas. I mean, sure, he's your typical I'm surrounded by idiots villain, but the performance really sells it. I love seeing him try to sabotage Shaggy's chance of winning out of Dick Dastardly and failing every time, and I love how easily frustrated he gets. The only person just as funny as him is his ditzy wife, Vampira. Her upbeat, chipper attitude combined with that voice kills me every time. I remember thinking Googie was a bit of a nag as a kid, but as an adult, the fact that she's willing to stick by Shaggy even after he turns into a werewolf and helps him out, there's definitely some good qualities to her. So yeah, I like her. I wish she was more fleshed out. My favorite scene is when Shaggy first changes to a werewolf at the drive-in, which could be a reference to one of the segments in Monsters Crash the Pajama Party. The last scene has Dracula, after being defeated, show up with the Hunch Bunch to plot revenge. This cliffhanger suggests there was supposed to be a follow-up, but that obviously never happened. On the whole, I still love this one. Some scenes drag and even kind of repetitive, but there's still a lot of funny gags and creativity that keep me coming back. Highly recommend. You can check out all 3 of these movies and Goes Hollywood on the Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10, the complete film collection on Blu-ray. I suppose we have time for one more special. Question is, which one to do? No. Lord no. This looks good. In 2021, the CW aired Scooby-Doo, Where Are You Now? So this was an obvious satire of all the reunion specials that were streaming at the time. You know, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion, the Martin reunion, and especially the Friends reunion. It takes a page out of Goes Hollywood and portrays the gang as actors on a TV show, reunited at Hanna-Barbera on a Warner Bros. Soundstage. Don't try to make sense of this. As we look back on 50 years of the franchise and learn about the history of how it came to be, while the gang gets roped into another mystery yet again. Honestly, not too much to say about this one. The only highlights are several notable names talking about why Scooby has lasted for so long, archival footage of Joe Barbera, and also production art for various series. Not to mention the current voice cast showing love to their roles. That was pretty neat. Aside from that, the jokes are pretty lame, with a waste of a good Sherry O'Terry cameo. There's also cameos from various Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera characters, though some of the voices were terrible. So, what's next for Scooby and the gang? Well, right now it's hard to say. This might be the second longest hiatus with no new Scooby-Doo content, and with Warner not being in a good spot right now, maybe it's appropriate the franchise has a little break. After all, the last hiatus brought us the greatest piece of Scooby-Doo media ever made, that arguably kickstarted the Scooby-Doo renaissance. And there are some new stuff coming. Please be good, please be good, please be good. Will they stand the test of time like Zombie Island or Mystery Incorporated? We'll have to tune in to find out. Until then, I'm gonna keep watching and I hope you will too. Whether classic or modern, Scooby-Doo will always have a special place in my heart. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy and I gotta fly.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!